Welcome back, everyone, to Profluence Sports. Excited today to have my guy, Brian Hough, on the podcast.
Hello.
Appreciate you hopping on, Brian, and
Yeah,
congrats
thanks for having me.
on your recent pre-seed round with,
Yes.
800 plus secured in a very tough market, Relay Ventures
Yes.
leading, and a few other firms,
Yeah.
including Profluence.
Yes.
So congrats.
Yes, thank you.
Give us the quick on who you are
Yep.
and what PressBox is, and we'll start to dive into the weeds of it.
Yeah, so I'm Brian Hough, I'm the CEO of PressBox, and PressBox is, at its basic form, a content personalization platform for leagues. People love to throw the term AI around. We use AI as obviously part of what we're doing, but at its base level, we are helping leagues, in particular emerging leagues, build the technology needed to run their own content operations around their sport. So if that is covering news around their sport, media monitoring around social, creating personalized stats and graphics and fantasy and betting, spent combined about 11 years at Bleacher Report solving this problem directly for fans at the media level. And Bleacher Report had tons of success. At the time we were there, was 70 million fans were coming in monthly to that property. And what they built there was amazing, and it was only scratching the surface of what is possible with personalization. And we believe we can bring this tech now to leagues that are just getting started, leagues that are not getting served by traditional media, and bring them the same power that they've had to lean on the ESPNs, the Bleacher Reports, the Yahoo Sports of the world to do for them.
Super cool. And from a media side, a lot of people know that there's the content. Like people think, oh, you just got to put out content and record it and production side. But there's a huge tech component
Yes.
as you get into the Bleacher Reports and the Minute Medias. And as I've learned more and more about it, what does that look like behind the scenes, just so people understand the intensity of that for these huge organizations?
There's so much going on, right? Because you're trying, especially today, media no longer just happens on television. When you were covering sports, 20 years ago, you just went to the game, you watched it on TV, and you did a report. Now we're ingesting tons of structured data. That's not just scores and standings. That's tracking data, telemetry in motorsports or GPS data, those type of things that they are injecting. And they're trying all of that to understand what's going on in the sport and to figure out how to generate interesting content. Because fans no longer just care about who won, right? They often care about an individual set of athletes. They care about fantasy. They care about gambling. They care about video games. And so there's so much more of the sport that you need to understand, and so much more technology for these media companies to keep up with what's going on. Showing you play-by-play in an app takes multiple companies, multiple levels of data, just so you can see that. And so you can imagine what it takes to then go from that and turn that play-by-play data into live content that's happening, right? Your players up at bad end of game, which there is companies out there that are like partnering with MLB TV to try to solve that problem. Like there's so much that you can do there. But there were 100 engineers at Bleacher Report at a minimum that were trying to serve just the team that was doing BR, to create the social content, do all the streaming. Video encoding is one of the largest costs that leagues deal with. And personalization is an interesting challenge there, because you're going from producing one piece of video for every single person to potentially needing to encode video for hundreds of thousands of different types of fans that want to see specific highlight packages, specific parts of the game, that type of thing.
Yeah, and we've seen the ad model be the dominant, business model in the market. Do you see that changing now? Is that part of this shift as well? Or what is the business model in media changing around to? You can feel the shift.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's both the media companies going through this shift and the leagues going through this shift, and they kind of look the same, which is like, we want to get paid for the content that we are producing in a very direct way. And I think this is happening in sports that don't have big television contracts in particular, because there is more value in bringing their fans back to their first party platform. Obviously, it starts with the on-field action, but it's also about how can we make money from producing unique content, personalized experiences, and media is doing the same thing. Things are moving behind paywalls. Things are becoming, you're getting influence over the editorial direction in some of these new media companies. It's really shifting to serving, the fan or the consumer in a way that hasn't happened, but the tech isn't fully there yet. And so that's why you get the hey, if you just like us, do the, pay our paywall and get access to our articles. Sports is a unique proposition because it can provide so much value that is directly related to the sport around it. Like New York Times does your crossword puzzles, your trivia, and like that stuff's fun and very successful. But in sports, we've got fantasy, we've got betting, we've got the merch side, like we've got other events that are around. Like this has become, as you know, a big thing in sports where it's not just like, hey, are we a sports venue, but are we also having a concert event? This is something that Formula One is doing a lot of. And so the more that they can make money around those type of things that are very personalized to the fans on their own properties, I think that is where it's shifting towards.
Interesting. And from a technological standpoint, over your 11 years and then to now to build your own thing, how much has that tech improved? Because obviously you feel like, hey, there's a 100-person team to take care of this whole thing. Now, as a company, our small team can essentially serve these leagues and drastically reduce their headcount and give them a similar-ish experience. What's happened on the tech side that's enabling that, or what's going on?
Yeah, this is so when we were doing it at Bleacher Report, it was a very manual process. There were people that were going out and literally crawling the web themselves, like following all the social accounts, using things like Meltwater and that type of thing to figure out what was going on the web. And when we personalized something, it was all done by hand. We had this concept of Bleacher Report where we were very focused on push notifications because that's how people consume a lot of sports. And we were building a lot of manual technology. So each person, or if you like the Yankees, that push notification was written differently than if you like the Mets, for example. Now, AI, this is what AI is good at. It's very challenging to create completely original content with AI that a human like actually enjoys and is authentic. But what it can do is take something that a human has created and create awesome variations of it that pull in specific stats based on who you care about, that change the headline depending on whether you're the team who won or you're the team that lost. Finding stuff and labeling data on the internet is so much easier. We were effectively just manual data labelers in the system that we built back in the day, right? Like we had some intern who'd go and look at LeBron's Instagram, label a bunch of things LeBron, and drag it into a feed. Now we're doing that at scale. So we can get content, we can get down to the second in a podcast that a particular athlete was mentioned and pull that clip out so a fan knows that that was mentioned. And it creates this interesting experience where as media shifts to influencers, there's a lot of companies out there that are now leaning into influencer covered sports. That means these leagues have to lean into that too, right? Now, if half your fans are getting their coverage from that influencer who's doing their own voiceover of your highlight clips, how do I get that in and then in front of the people that might care about it? And so the tech to find things, the tech to raise them to the surface for fans, and then the tech to publish it is now stuff that is all automatable because of machine learning and AI that just wasn't available, 10 years ago when we started at BR.
Yeah, it's super cool. And from a client perspective, you talk a lot about, the emerging teams and leagues and that pick and shovel type play, which is awesome. And we've seen that huge shift, and we've had tons of those leagues on the podcast, and it's fascinating what's happening which is taking place there. Do you see this serving other groups? Can it serve individuals? Can it serve media companies? Like, how broad do you plan to take PressBox beyond just the leagues, but obviously, starting there, it seems?
We want to go very broad. We want to go outside of sports. Sports right now is a great focus for us because, one, it is underserved by the market. Most personalization products and AI content products in general are very non-sports specific, and there's a lot of things that make sports specific solutions be important. But this is a problem everywhere. Like when we started the company, I had this vision of like a consumer app where I could literally just program my own feed, right? If I love airbrushed goalie masks down to Jordans, and I could get everything that I wanted from the sources that I cared about and the formats that I cared about. And that's where media is going ultimately. There's awesome companies like Particle out there that are doing this on the general news front. And I think we're just scratching the surface, and we have those same designs. Like a lot of the challenges we're solving for sports, our personalization is a challenge for fans of video games, fans of esports, fans of movies and music. And so it applies to a lot of places, and all of those are going the same way. Political news is a very similar thing where it's become very influencer driven, right? It's all happening on social now. They're getting invited to the White House. And so the challenge of like finding out who's talking about you and getting the right content in front of your fans is only going to get worse. You can't just like follow the 5 sports sites you've always followed and know everything that's being said about your sport. And while that's been the case for a long time, it hasn't necessarily been the primary way that fans have consumed sports. And I think that is what has been shifting in particular in the last few years.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with you. It is interesting. If you just look at the last election, I mean, it was a lot driven by podcast and influencer. So you're seeing this shift on media itself, and then how do you now aggregate it? And we saw new news places. it's quite interesting when like things just they happen slowly, but they kind of happen all at once too. And then
Yes,
people step
yes.
back 5 years and they go, wait, here was the change. Because it's not like podcasts haven't been around for 15 years or so.
I started my career in podcasts like
Yeah.
20 years ago. It was a completely different world. And now we're like, podcasts have finally made it. By the way, we've said that every like 3 years for the last 2 decades. But it is like
Right.
meaningful. It just slowly chips away at it. They say that humans are really bad at understanding exponential growth. And this is a very good example where it's like we can't, we in the year to 2 years, we're like, oh, podcasts haven't taken over. And now we're talking about how presidential elections were lost because you didn't get on the right influencer podcast. And today that's your Joe Rogans and whatnot. But the next election cycle, is it somebody who's like some 20 something that started on YouTube? We already saw a little bit of that this election cycle. And so we, as media companies, as media organizations, as brands and businesses, like this is a trend that is going to continue to happen. And how you figure out how people are talking about you and generate content that speaks to them is going to get far more complicated in the next decade.
Yeah, it is, because it's getting, like you said, influencer driven. With it is a Rogan is, he's much more popular than any of the mainstream, but like there's not the control, and it's a lot of this. It's like fragmenting, and then it does it, consolidate back up. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting trends just in broader media across that. But in sports, I don't think you can talk about any use cases yet, like with names attached. But give us an example of one of how it would work, what they're looking to do, and then when we have you back on at some point, then we can
we'll be able to talk
into
about
the success stories.
Yeah, so I could talk. So motorsports is one place that we're deeply invested. We started in motorsports. We're all big motorsports fans, and motorsports is a very interesting, very data-driven sport. And so what we're doing with the companies that we're working with in motorsports is a few things. One is a lot around what's going on in the race. And so a race is, a 2-hour event, but it is also a multi-day event with qualifying and things of that nature. And so we are monitoring all the coverage that is happening around motorsports. We're monitoring what is happening on track. And we're doing a few things. We're generating content that is like a race recap that is personalized to our end users. And so they're getting standings that highlights their specific drivers. They're getting videos that show, great passes from their drivers, things of that nature. But then it extends beyond that. It's going to sync with their fantasy feeds. And so if I have my fantasy team laid out, it's going to show the drivers that are on that fantasy feed, give me a report at the end. We're also doing things live on the betting side. And so as betting odds and things happening during the race change, we're going to be producing content real time that is then going to be pushed out to users, kind of like in a betting intelligence style feature that allows them to feel like they have an edge during the game, give them things that are happening during that event, and then be able to adjust their bets accordingly. And so a lot of what we're working on with pilots is on that side. And then we're also, which is a new team that we were not originally thinking about, is helping out on the broadcast side. If you watch an NBA game, you still see them get handed the giant pile of paperwork stats in between every quarter. And so we've been working with a couple broadcast teams to use the same technology that the content team is using to find milestones happening in an event, interesting news stories that they could talk about in with the broadcaster, so they can use it both to generate the graphics live, but also so that they can do live research and have more talking points during the event. In particular, what tends to happen, and we working in motorsports, we're also working in surfing, and those are very long broadcasts with a lot of time to fill. And so it's a really great use case for us where the broadcasters are like, hey, can you tell me if this person is the first person to do it for Brazil, and like that type of thing. And now they've got a live dashboard in front of them that's surfacing all of that. They'll be able to go, oh, that's great, and then send it to the truck knowing that they're about to be able to talk about it, and that graphic is ready to go. And so we've found that core understanding of the sport opens up so many opportunities for us on the content side. So those are a few examples of the pilots that we've been working on.
Yeah, it's fascinating from a real-time standpoint. I'm curious on what is the balance between, the real-time broadcast, like you're saying, and then the one that's sort of just like a Bleacher Report that might be, hey, the next day. Like, how do you balance that? Are groups using both, or some just using one? What does that look like as you build? And what's the technological differences for you guys to build both? I'm sure there's some nuance there.
Yeah, so there's the media use cases where that we are definitely helping, where it's about fans. You're a media organization and you just want to follow what's going on the sport, whether it's an event recap that comes to you in a newsletter after the fact, or ongoing news updates, we're definitely doing that. And there is definitely a mixture. In the off time in between events, this is how most leagues are using us, right? They're monitoring news. They're using us to create personalized newsletters. We can do that down. In fact, we're actually experimenting with a few use cases where we're going down to the individual and doing like, where can we just produce, like, you are an influencer in a particular space like yourself, and I want to create newsletter and automated social content. So we're experimenting and going down to that level, but there's definitely those media use cases. Those are far more about our AI's ability to know what's trending in the places that we're crawling, be able to find things that will speak to specific types of audiences. The real-time side is like a huge data lift, because in a lot of cases we are consuming the raw data stream that is coming direct from the league, and we are having to interpret that at a speed that is useful for the broadcast, right? And this is a challenge with broadcast today, where it's like, hey, 15 minutes after a thing happened, I'm going to bring it back up and show you the replay. Our goal is to, for those micro moments, be able to speed that up. But there's a lot of tech, as you can imagine, that goes into that, getting it back encoded in feed, that type of thing. And so this is where our background at Bleacher Report and being able to support not just the media side, but keep in mind BR was also supporting the NBA on TNT side. There was a lot of Bleacher Report branding and content going on there, and a lot of what we were doing was also feeding to that live broadcast.
Yeah, and as you go to these orgs, or a lot of them are starting to come to you, that it's more public. What's the why should everyone use it? What's the hey, this is a no-brainer type pitch, which obviously it sounds like through this point, but I'm
Yes.
sure people start to dig into some things. What does that look like from your side?
Yeah, so I think the leagues that are most excited to work with us, where we're having the most success, are the ones that are already bought in on personalization and are looking for great partners to figure out what that output should be. I think personalization is a buzzword to a lot of people right now, but there's a lot of leagues sitting on lots of CDP data that they don't know what to do with, right? They're getting somewhere. We're working with some great partners that are doing this on the events and merchandise side, but they don't know how to do it with the content side. And so if you are like, hey, I've got this giant pile of CDP data, I'm all in on personalization, I just don't know how to scale it for myself, whether you're a media organization, a league, an individual team, that's where we come in and shine. You go from, and this is not about efficiency per se, but we're working with companies that'll have a one-person content team that can now operate end to end, from the media monitoring side to the content and editorial, to the publishing to social. Like, it gives you an opportunity, especially as an early organization, to build that superpower from the beginning before you've had to do what a lot of other leagues are doing, sticks and bubble gum and all the various different things that they're having to piece together through vendors and contractors. Like, a big value that we bring is like, we can be an end-to-end solution for you, so you just have the singular tool. And those are the leagues that we're having the most success with early on.
That's awesome. Yeah, as we wrap up here, Brian, where can people learn more? What's website, socials? Where can people reach out and, get in contact?
Yeah, so you can go to our website at pressbox.studio. We are on LinkedIn and everywhere else as PressBox HQ, I think. Social handles are fun these days. So you can definitely check that out. And then you can find me on all of social media, B_Hough. And then obviously I'm very active in the Profluence community. A lot of people listening to this will be in that community. I'm always available via that platform as well, if anybody ever wants to reach out.
Awesome. I love it. Well, great stuff, and congrats again on the pre-seed from Relay Ventures, which we'll give them a shout out. They're doing good stuff as well.
Yes. Yeah, they've been tremendous partners.
Look forward to seeing and having you on again at the next steps as you get rolling.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, Andrew.